Today we're making these beautiful brass crisscross earrings. First, apply your pattern to your metal. I used a Sharpie to draw the pattern on. If you do not have a jewelry saw, you may use joist chin scissors to cut around your pattern. I'm using 18 gauge brass for this design, and it cannot be cut with scissors. If you're using scissors, use a lighter gauge metal. I've had success cutting up to 20 gauge silver and copper and 22 gauge brass with the joist chin scissors. Of course, the ultimate cutting device is the jewelry saw. Always lubricate your saw before beginning. One swipe through the wax or lubricant is enough. There is no need for more. When using a jewelry saw, you will need to saw straight up and down. But to get started, you will need to tilt your saw at approximately 45 degrees to cut a small notch. Once the notch is cut, tilt your saw blade up to an upright position. Place your fingers behind the blade as shown to help prevent injury. This may not always be possible on every piece, but if at all possible, it is the safest way to saw and a great habit to develop. Slow and steady wins the race. Often when you see someone sawing, it may appear that they are sawing very fast. They may be, but it is because through much time and practice, they automatically saw at a more efficient pace. Their fast movements are the result of muscle memory that has developed through time, and they just automatically saw faster. It is critically important, though, that in the beginning, you saw very carefully and deliberately to learn proper movement. Use the entire length of the blade from top to bottom. This will prevent you from wearing a spot in the center of the blade, causing it to break. Do not force the saw through the metal. The blade is very sharp and will cut with little effort on your part. Simply pull the saw down and it will cut. Lift and pull, lift and pull. Do not push the saw and the blade forward. This will break the blade. Be patient, just pulling down and lifting up. When you come to a curve, you will need to keep your saw in motion, turning the metal, not the saw. If you have ever sewn, think of moving the fabric rather than the machine. You must keep the saw moving when turning the metal. If you do not, the blade will get into a bind and break. As you move the saw up and down, gently turn your metal. From time to time, you will notice that your blade is not gliding through the metal as easily as in the beginning. It is time to stop and lubricate. Simply pick up your saw, letting the metal slide to the bottom of the blade, and move to your lubricant. One swipe through, and you are good to go. Move the entire saw and piece back to the bench pin and continue to saw. You will always need to file a sawn edge. Even if you follow the design perfectly, there will be saw lines and slight bobbles that mar the edge. Rest your piece in a notch you've made in your bench pin. Files only cut as they are moving away from you. You must hold them with the tang or handle in your palm. Firmly hold the file against the edge and push forward. Pick the file up and move it back to the place you started. Continue to file in this manner, checking periodically to see when you have achieved a smooth edge. When you have a curved surface, file in a fluid motion up and over the curve. If you do not have a bench pin, cut a small notch into your workbench table edge. You must have a stable place to rest your piece on when filing. Continue to file all the edges of both earrings. Once you have completed that, then you will need to file a rounded edge at the point so it is not sharp. You may file as little or as much as you like. It is your preference how rounded to make the top. When you think you have completed your filing, take both pieces and lay one on top of the other to confirm that they are the same shape and size. Next, you will need to mark a dividing line on each earring where you will separate the shiny part from the textured part. I had started out making a straight line, but as I began to look at it, I decided I wanted my crisscrosses to curve. You may want more shiny or more textured. You can do that by moving the ruler to one side or the other. This is your design. You decide. Next, I used a hammer on a steel block to texture only one side of the earrings. I used a Fretz hammer with a ball peen end. You may use any type hammer that you would like to use. Even if it has a marred surface, that can be some of the most interesting texture you'll ever see. You pick a hammer and you go to town. When you have the texture you like, you stop. Sometimes I would hold my hand right up to the line so I would not cross over. But be careful, you'll hit your finger. Next, I used my Sharpie to make 3 sets of 4 dots. Think of putting them on the 4 corners of a box. These will mark where I will drill to make my crisscrosses. I also marked and drilled where I wanted to place my earring wire. Be sure when you're marking that you do not put it too close to the edge. You must accommodate for the size of the drill bit. The drill bits that I am using are Rio Grande polished high-speed steel twist drill bits, 1.3 millimeter, and the item number is 349084. You will find this listed in the printables supply list. When drilling, hold your drill vertically over the piece. Rest your hand on your bench pin to stabilize yourself. You never want to try and hold the drill on the piece without being anchored. Touch your drill bit to the piece and lightly press. Then slowly depress your pedal. Drill through the piece, holding on and pressing firmly to your bench pin. Move from hole to hole until you've drilled all holes. If you do not have a flex shaft, you may purchase a hole punch like the one shown or a Dremel rotary device. These earrings will need to be annealed or softened with heat so that we can shape them into soft domed shapes. As they are too hard to form without creasing or bending. I am using a little Smith torch. I normally anneal with my silversmith torch but was out of acetylene that day. For those of you who do not have a torch setup, let me recommend the Blazer GT8000 Big Shot butane torch. It is durable and has a high heat flame. There are other small handheld butane torches out there, but I have found that many do not last long. I have not used this one and cannot guarantee its longevity, but it comes highly recommended. You will also need a hard charcoal soldering disc to place your metal on. This may be used with all types of metal. With brass, you will focus your torch on your metal and move around, the pieces never holding it in one place. You will watch for the shadow that moves across the metal. These instructions are for annealing brass and copper, not Argentium silver. Once annealed, quench. Here I'm using my jewel tool with the 3M 80 grit sanding disc to knock off any burrs or rough spots from the drilling and any fire scale from annealing. You can use 80 grit sandpaper or an 80 grit small rotary disc in your rotary tool or flex shaft. I am using a leather bag to shape my earrings. I am also using the wooden dapping dowels from my wooden doming set. With out of the ordinary shapes, you must use something that will flex and bend with the shape of your piece. I use the leather bag often to shape my pieces. The wooden dapping set is another inexpensive tool that I recommend. Here I am starting out with the size dowel that is just smaller than the earring. I laid the piece face down in the center of the bag and placed the dowel onto the piece. I am using a brass hammer to deliver the blows. I am moving and pressing outward as I hammer to keep from having only a round shape like the dowel in the center of the piece. I move up and down the earring. Then I move to a smaller dowel to depress more in the center. This process causes the piece to over-curl. I lay it backside down on the bench and gently tap to flatten out the pieces somewhat. Don't tap too hard or you will mar the surface or flatten too much. Once the earrings are domed, it is time to weave the Argentium twisted wire into the holes. First, cut 3 pieces of wire approximately 35 millimeters long. Using a pair of flat nose pliers, bend each piece into a squared off U-shape. From the bottom side of the earrings, insert the wire into the bottom 2 holes. Pull them through snugly from the front. Hold the wire snugly against the back with your finger while taking one of the protruding wires and bending it over into the diagonal hole. Pull from behind until it is snug. Now do this for the other protruding wire until both wires are now sticking out of the back of the earring. Make sure that the wires fit snugly against the earring, both in the front and in the back. From the back, press the protruding wires flat against the earring. Use your flat-nosed pliers to pinch them together where they meet in the center of the holes and are pointing to the top of the earring. Next, take the second wire and insert it from the back into the next 2 holes. The tails of the previous wire will be held in place by this new wire. Pull the second wire from the front until it is snug. As with the first wire, bend the wires and insert them into their corresponding diagonal holes. Once again, press these new protruding wires flat against the earring. Use your flat-nosed pliers to pinch them together where they meet in the center of the holes and are pointing to the top of the earring. Then take the final wire and do the same. Once that wire is in place, all the previous tails should be held tight in place by an overlapping wire. For those 2 tails from behind, cross one over the other tightly so that they extend out to the opposite sides of the earring. Pull them tight. Take your flat-nosed pliers and place them where the wires cross. Pinch both wires together and then give them a full turn so that the ends now point in the opposite direction. Clip those wires so that they do not extend past the earring and press them down toward the earring so that the ends will not catch on clothing or hair. Then you will want to trim all extending tails that protrude too far up. They should not interfere where the earring wire will sit. Now watch as I weave my wire through my earrings. You will notice that my wire is incredibly long. This is the first time I had tried this, and I wasn't quite sure how much wire to cut at this point. But I did realize I needed approximately 35 to 40 millimeters. I am using a jewel tool to polish my pieces before doming. This is a versatile tool that I use often. For those of you who do not have this tool, you may use the smaller 3M radial discs for your flex shaft or Dremel. Another economical option for those just getting started are the 3M polishing papers. Regardless of which method you use, work your way from the most coarse disc or paper all the way through to the least coarse grit. You may be tempted to skip a grit, but if you will be patient and work your way through each one, you will see it in the outcome of your finished piece. The final result will be beautiful. I chose to use Midas's black-brown patina on these earrings. I have found that gives a rich, almost blackish-brown richness to the brass. You could use liver of sulfur in the powder form or gel form. It is personal preference. Use Blue Dawn dishwashing soap and a soft brass brush, not a hard-wired brass brush, which you often find at a hardware store. Those have very hard bristles and will scratch your pieces. The kind I'm referring to you will find at a jewelry supply such as Rio Grande. They have very soft bristles and will not scratch your jewelry. Scrub the earrings thoroughly to make sure they are very clean so nothing will hinder the patina process. I use small condiment cups for small items and pour a small amount of the patina into the cup. I then place both earrings into the cup and swirl around. I rinse in very hot water, then use Dawn soap and the brass brush again to clean. You may find that some of the patina will flake off. That is okay. I repeat this process of cleaning and applying patina until I can clean vigorously with the brass brush and no patina flakes off. Once I have applied my patina, I dry completely so no water can get to my steel tools. I want to remove the patina from the high points, so I use a 4/0 steel wool to gently rub back on the textured areas until I have rubbed back enough to only rest in the textured areas. Be sure and use a face mask when dealing with steel wool. It flakes off and gets into the air, and you do not want to breathe it. I also rub back the silver crisscrosses so that the patina will rest underneath and in the grooves of the twisted wire. Once that is done, I take my piece back to the jewel tool and polish off all the patina on the smooth side. I polish until I have a high shine. If you do not have a jewel tool, use the small rotary discs in a rotary tool or flex shaft, or use the jewelry sandpapers. I then rinse and brush with Dawn soap one more time to remove debris from the polishing. At this time, I add my earring wire. You may buy pre-made earring wires, or you may make your own. See my video on how to make an earring wire from Argentium silver. You can do this with any torch, even a small butane torch. I recommend making several at a time and have them on hand. I tumble almost every single piece of jewelry that I make. A rotary tumbler is one of the first pieces of equipment that I recommend students get. You will use it with almost every single piece, and nothing else can duplicate the effect on your jewelry that a tumbler can have. I usually tumble for up to 2 hours to get the greatest hardening and polishing effect.